Well, I just went ahead and confirmed the same three police officers, alleged police officers at the Sandy Hook shooting back in December, are also present at the Boston Marathon bombing, wearing private military clothing and boots, etc. That was my previous video. It's starting to get real disturbing living in this country, seeing what people are capable of doing. Other Americans, these aren't foreigners, these are other Americans doing this for some agenda. Having said that, time to move on. And I have a Lindsey Williams update if anyone hadn't been following him lately, which is interesting because it's kind of talking like some of the Webbot stuff here. I know Lindsey Williams doesn't listen to the Webbot, but I took some notes on basically what he said. You know, Lindsey Williams, you could listen for an hour and come out with like 5 things. But the guy's been right. I mean, there's no questioning. He's been right. Here's the notes I've got. New Zealand, Australia, and Japan. Get ready to hear those countries in the news, financial stuff. They are going to have something similar happen to them like what happened in Cyprus. Not a bailout, but a bail-in. They want to do something similar in the USA, but not to the banking system. They want to take out a certain percentage of people's retirement funds. So they don't want to bail in from the banking system where they just ultimately steal someone's money because you had over the FDIC insured limit. We'll just take everything you own and write it off. They don't want to do that in the USA, according to him. They want to do it differently and go after the retirement funds. That's how they want to do it in our country. David Stockman, April 2nd, New York Times. This is what he said that the elite friend of his told him specifically. He said David Stockman wrote something for the New York Times, or was talking, whatever, interview, writing an article, I think is what he said. On, again, April 2nd, 2013, David Stockman, New York Times. That's what he told Lindsey Williams, go and read it. He specifically told him, go and read that. In other words, that's one of the buzzwords. That's us telling the sheeple what's going down. And ultimately what he said that it said was Fed's quantitative easing or QE policies have flooded the stock market with cash. Which again, Lindsey Williams said would happen. We would see the stock market rise, and when it can't rise, it's going to rise more. And when there's no reason it would rise some more on top of that, and then another rising and rising and rising after that to pull every last sucker back in. So naturally, the Fed's QE policies have flooded the stock market with cash. His elitist friend told him specifically, go to that website, whatever, the thing from David Stockman, and read it. When it bursts, this is what it talks about. When the Fed's QE policies flooding the stock market, pumping a bubble in the stock market, when it bursts, there will be no new rounds of bailouts. No more. Done. That's what they told him. Done. There will be no bailout. It's going to crash, and it's good night. Instead, he says, America will go into an era, if you will, of zero-sum austerity. I don't know why he used the word zero-sum austerity as opposed to just austerity. I'm kind of wondering if that was like a little, another buzzword that I didn't quite catch why he used that particular way of saying it. But instead, America will go into an era of zero-sum austerity. Maybe, zero sum meaning there's not going to be a limit to how bad the austerity. I don't know. Anyways, instead, America will go into an era of zero sum austerity and go into a violent political conflict, extinguishing even today's feeble remnants of economic growth. So we're going to go into austerity. Austerity measures will be implemented and go into violent political conflict, extinguishing even today's feeble remnants of economic growth. So in other words, they ain't going to be cooking no books and lying. Oh, unemployment's down to 7.5%. We are in a recovery. Stock market's broken records. And so has food stamp usage. So has food stamp usage broke records. How is that possible? How do you have an unbelievably great stock market? Unbelievably economic recovery. Unbelievable jobs coming out because the unemployment was at 9, whatever it was, and down to 7.5 recently. Man, you can't have food stamp usage climbing simultaneously while those other things are doing the opposite. allegedly. Anyways, he said, again, referring him to Vice President Joe Biden, a speech he gave. And he said Vice President Biden made some comments and gave some specific buzzwords. He spoke at the Export-Import Bank Conference. Right out of the gate, or not out of the gate, but one of the first things he said was that we need a, quote, new world order, end quote. Now, that's funny because I was pretty sure that was a conspiracy. And, maybe Hulk Hogan back in the 1990s and stuff, or 80s. I thought that was Hulk Hogan, the wrestlers, his boys. That was his little club, the NWO, New World Order. And, if anyone ever runs into Hulk Hogan by chance, could you just do me a favor and ask him, say, listen, Hulk, man, remember when you had the thing a long time ago called the New World Order, the little group? Yeah. What made you guys come up with that name? Did someone tell you it would be a good thing to do, or did you just come up with that on your own? I'd be willing to bet that someone told him to do it. And he said, oh, that sounds cool. That sounds like a good idea. Not realizing they were trying to use him as a tool to get that word out there to the sheeple watching this fake crap wrestling. I'd be willing to bet on that, just to be honest with you. So Biden said right off the bat, we need a new world order. And then he said the following two things. Okay, he called for a new world order with, quote, new financial institutions. Then he said we need an updated set of global rules. In other words, we need a new constitution. Can't use America's. It's got to be global. And it will be one with, of course, a New World Order agenda attached to it. Nothing like a USA constitution. And, of course, we need a new banking system. That's what that word meant. New financial institutions. In other words, we need a new banking system. One world order, one world government, one world money system. Remember that? Where have we heard that before? Last and final thing. When you see major, he says, major currency wars taking place, and then it leads right into trade wars, which the currency war thing, I've already heard nations bumbling about that for a little while now. Months and months now. But he says specifically major currency wars taking place, then trade wars, and whenever you here's the big one, and I told you about this the other day in my thoughts. And the final thing, when you hear the Federal Reserve, and they're going to do this, he said, when you hear the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates, it is game over. It will start happening then. It's go time. The Federal Reserve will raise interest rates. And if I had to guess when that would happen, personally, and this is just a guess, I would say after the stock market crash or during the stock market crash, because the money that will be flowing out of the stock market as it's being destroyed has to go somewhere, and they don't want it going to gold and silver, of course. So they will make interest rates rise once again, which means the home loans, for you to get a home loan, will cost a lot more money. Therefore, the home values are going to be absolutely and utterly destroyed. As I said the other day, by the way, that's what happens when the interest rates rise. And that was also in the Webbot report, which is why I spoke about it, because that's what I was talking about at the time. And I used the example from the 1980s when it was like 15, 16, 17, 18% for home loans back then. My dad told me about it too. Long ago, actually, he told me about it. And I'll use the example now that I used just the other day. Let's say you have a house for sale for $150,000 right now, today. And you might find this hard to believe, but let me just use this for an example. It's also worth $150,000 today. You get it appraised, it's worth $150,000 today. I'm going to go ahead and sell the house. Okay. If you do that today, the guy buying the house probably can get a 4% loan on it, roughly. Plus or minus a little bit, depending on his credit, whatever. He can get about a 4% interest rate loan on that house right now. So just for simple math, and I don't know what this equals, but we're going to use simple math for this little educational session I'm giving you as a bonus, because I like handing out bonuses to my peeps. Let's just say the payment is $1,000 a month. That's what he's got to come up with to pay that mortgage. at 4% interest rate. Matter of fact, you know what? I do like pulling a Bill O'Reilly every now and then too. Well, F it. We'll do it live. Jason at 4 is going to do it live. Let's just take a little peek. Here we go. Bank calculators. Just so I can give you the real numbers, because I know I can make this simple, but my internet's actually working at this particular moment in time. So we'll say 150,000, 30-year note, interest rate. We're going to say 4%. Calculate $716. Okay. I know I said $1,000. I was just making it up, but let's go ahead with the real deal here. You give them your pay stubs, and they do your background check and everything on, financial background check. Okay, you're solid, sir. You got a good credit score. You want this house for $150,000. You got it. Your payments are $716 a month. Of course, there's taxes and local taxes, all that crap, whatever. $716 a month. Then all of a sudden, interest rates rise. Let's say they go back to where they were in the 1980s, 15%. Let's just throw 15% out there. 15%. Do you have any idea? This is going to blow your mind. This is going to blow your mind when I tell you what the new number is. By taking 4%, nothing else has changed. $150,000 house, the house didn't change. The brick that created the house didn't change. The weather didn't change. The guy selling the house didn't change. It's the same house. And it's still appraised at $150,000 until they raised the interest rates from 4%, which was $716 a month, to 15%. Are you ready for the new payment? $1,900. I'm not making it up. The exact total, $1,896.67. $1,896. So $1,900 is what a 15% loan, interest rate loan, would do to you. So, same example. The guy's money he's earning at work that wants to buy that house didn't change. Just because interest rates go up, do you get a big raise at work all of a sudden? Do they come to you and say, hey, your pay just went up like triple? No. Matter of fact, nothing happens. You keep getting the same crappy paycheck you've always gotten. So he can only afford a $150,000 house. At the time, interest rates were 4%. So let me say that in a better way. He can only afford around an $800 a month payment. This was $716. So he's good. He's got a little ample room to work with. He can afford $800 a month because, again, he's got to get insurance and the other stuff that goes with that, which will push him up to $1,000, $1,100 a month, whatever it is. So $800 a month, that's where he needs to be. And there's a whole bunch of other Americans just like him. Matter of fact, every other American out there is pretty much in his same situation. They have a fixed income that doesn't really change. So if this is $1,900 and that house was $150,000, which it hasn't changed, the housing prices have to crash. They have to collapse in order to meet that guy's affordability payment. So let's go down to $100,000 at 15% interest rate to see where that brings it. $1,264. Not good enough. Not good enough. Sorry about that. Let's go down to $50,000. I was at $150,000. Let's go down to $50,000. Same everything. 15% interest, 30-year term. Oh, sorry, I put $5,000. Let me try that one more time. $632. Now remember what it was before? It was $617, I think I told you. It's $632. Still doable. Matter of fact, it's for all intents and purposes. Now we're back where we need to be. Or was it $716? I think it was $716. Let's bump this up to $60,000. $758 a month. We're good. $60,000 house. It has to crash almost triple. Almost. In order for this guy to make the same payment. So like I said in the other video when I was talking about the WebBot, Can you imagine getting a $150,000 to $200,000 house, whatever, in a decent area? And I'm speaking like back in Tennessee or Florida even. And there's some nice places around here. Let me tell you something. That are currently 150 to 160, 70 all day, and they are very nice, big houses, big garages, big old farm behind, farmhouse, land. I mean, nice stuff. What I'm telling you right now is by showing you this, and I don't know where they're going to put the interest rates to start with, so I'm just throwing 15% out. It may go to 10%, it may go to 12%, but the same principle applies here. That damn farmhouse can be had for $60,000 potentially. If you had bought silver all these years I've been screaming to do it, you would have been buying it at $10, $12, $15, $20, $30, $40, $45, back down to $40, $35, $30, and recently $24, roughly. Which is funny because to even get silver at $24, anyone that's got it, APMEX or whoever, they want to charge you $30, $31 for it. So the price didn't actually change at all. As a matter of fact, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? However, when all of this kind of crap is going on, the precious metals prices are going to be going way up. And if they go way up, because as Ben Bernanke said also, back in 2002, if he was in charge of the Fed and we were facing a very bad economic time, which according to what Lindsey Williams was just told to read at the New York Times is definitely coming, he gave 5 things he would do to help float the economy through the hard times. Bring the interest rates down to zero, print all this money, quantitative easing, right? He named all the stuff, and he's done it. He's done 4 out of the 5. The 5th and final one, he hasn't done yet. Devalue the currency. He said it. He would do it. And if our debt is at $17 trillion when this happens, which that's where we're at right now, and let's just assume it happened this year, it was $9 trillion when he took office, 9 point something. It's that close to being double. So if they just devalued the dollar 50%, half, cut it in half, we're back down to the 9 trillion roughly, 8.5 trillion, whatever. We're down to $8.5 trillion still owed, which wasn't sustainable then. So 50% devaluation ain't enough. Not enough. And when we devalue, China will devalue, and Russia will devalue, and India will devalue. And the Spanish-speaking nations, they will devalue. And it'll be, as Lindsey Williams said, there'll be a currency war, which will lead to trade wars because everyone wants to be competitive to keep global trade going. And we got to export. United States, you haven't been exporting. Now you want to export. Now you want to compete with us. We had a good thing here. You're lowering your dollar. We need to lower our dollar. Oh, you lowered it again? We need to lower ours again. Do you have any idea where the price of gold and silver is going to go when this happens? And you know what I say? Good, go ahead. I tried to wake everybody up. I've told my whole family. I've told all my friends. Most of them which don't give a crap. If this house, a very nice house, can go for $60,000, is it any stretch of the imagination that a not so nice house, maybe a $100,000 house, which by the way, back in Florida, right now in Tennessee, you can buy a pretty nice house, very satisfying house for $100K. I'm not talking about the ritzy neighborhoods, just an average, good Tampa, Florida, Brandon, Florida, where I lived. They're there because that's where the prices are. They're sub 100,000 now, easily, 80s and 90s, and even 70s, some of them. Where do you think those will go? I gave you a $150,000 example here. Do you realize we could see housing in the $20,000 and $30,000 and $40,000 price range? And I'm talking decent, nice housing. And if you have silver and gold, I'm a silver guy, so I'll just say silver, that you've been buying all this time, and then it skyrockets, and then the currency wars and the trade wars, and it just keeps going. And you decide one day, let me just take a little, not all of it, little pile of it in my hand here, and go cash it into the coin dealer, wherever you decide to sell it. And you take that cash, which will be American dollars, sure will. It'll be fiat currency, but that's what we work with here in this country. But you'll get a lot of those fiat dollars for that silver. And then you go Sir, you gonna get a mortgage on this house? Hell no, I'm not. I'm gonna buy it cash. It's $40,000 for this nice house. Yes, it is. Bingo. Here you go. The other thing will be the property owners who actually own the house. And again, let's go back to the $150,000 house that even appraises today for $150,000. You know, as hard as that is to come by. And then this whole thing happens, and they're still trying to sell the house. And then all of a sudden, interest rate starts going way up. 10%, 12%, 13%, whatever. That person is no longer able to sell the house. Now they are deeply underwater because the prices are going to be plummeting, as I said why, because people won't be able to afford those prices. The pricing will have to come down to meet the equilibrium. Interest rates and housing and affordability for people to make payments has to have an equilibrium. And that monthly payment and that interest rate are tied at the hip, so to speak, which means the housing prices must come down for that to work. Which means banks are going to be getting a massive amount of houses back on foreclosure. But does that mean the bank can then raise the price up and get rid of it? No, they can't. Because they too, now that they own this house, foreclosed on it, whatever, now they own it, they still have to go for what the market says it goes for. And if the interest rates are high and people's monthly bills are the same and monthly income's the same, then that bank is going to sell that house that it foreclosed on someone that owed $100,000 on it or $150,000 on it. They're going to foreclose on it, do that whole thing, and then sell it for $40,000 or whatever, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to the guy who has to get a 12 or 13% interest rate loan, who is then making those same outrageous high payments that he was making when it was $150,000, except now he's making it when it was $50,000. The banks are going to be making out like absolute criminal bandits. But they will not be making out like bandits from people like you and me who have been collecting silver. Because we don't have to play that debt game. We don't have to go and get a loan. Here you go. Here you go. You want that in silver, rounds, bars, or paper money? Or you want a bank check? Gotcha. Be right back. Let me go run to the coin store. Cha-ching. Because they're going to be buying and selling all day long. Coin stores do not change. Doesn't matter what the price of gold and silver are. They are a buyer every day and they are a seller every day. It's just the way the whole industry works. You can go anywhere. And even if you had to turn in some silver and you got $50,000 for it and they had to report that to the IRS and you had to pay taxes on it. Assuming you went that route to where you went to one of the big dealers, which would be okay actually. And they said, IRS sees this as some kind of taxable income, retirement, whatever, so they hit you with some tax. Well, then you just sell a few $1,000s worth of silver so that it's not reported and use that to pay the taxes. Are you going to be real upset when silver is hundreds of dollars an ounce and you had to pay taxes if you go that route to where you're paying taxes because the IRS found out, whatever? If you're going to buy a house with it, it's probably going to be hard to hide that, but you're might have to pay taxes on that as if it was income because it's kind of like a retirement, so to speak. That's okay. You will gladly pay income tax on that when you realize what you paid for it to begin with and what it's worth now and what house I just bought with it. You may even give Uncle Sam a freaking bonus. Okay? That's all I got for you. Take care. Hope you were thoroughly educated on this one. Appreciate that.